Welcome on back to the Fourth and 30 podcast. You would have just been listening to some sweet music if our AV guy didn't suck. But it is the day after the Super Bowl, and we have some thoughts on it. You guys all saw it play out last night. Final score 31-9. So I'm going to throw it to Kyler, who is probably going to give us the most unbiased opinion on what happened last night.
So, in regards to the Super Bowl last night, I'll start off with I think Tom Brady gave not just the Mahomes and the Chiefs a lesson, but the whole rest of the NFL. We all know. I don't think anybody can argue who the goat is now, Tom Brady. And I used to be a believer in that. I thought Tom Brady was great, but it sure felt like he had a lot of support on his teams in the past and everything's clicking. But now I'm starting to understand that has a little something to do with Tom Brady. And this Buccaneers team, they weren't the best team all year, but through Tom Brady's leadership, they continued to push. And his attitude coming into, I think that has a big impact on the team. And watching that team last night, it was just a kind of a beautiful thing to watch. They played old school football, and they gave the rest of the NFL a lesson that you know this is the best way to win. Running the football with those big two bruising running backs. And nobody has two running backs like Fournette and Jones. And the offensive line got better and better all year. And they just punished that Chiefs defense and wore them out. On the other hand, they played great defense. And I'll have some comments about the Chiefs offense here in a second. But going to the Chiefs, all year teams have played the Chiefs to not get beat deep. They play five or six people in the box and they play a lot of pass coverage. And the Buccaneers didn't do anything different really there. I thought the Chiefs really their play calling, their offensive coordinator, I thought they didn't run the ball enough. Because when they were handing the ball off in the first quarter, they were getting 5 yards, 10 yards a pop. They were running the ball with success. They just didn't do it enough, and they didn't keep their defense off the field. So I think they kind of shot themselves in the foot there. And then once and going back in the game, the score was 7-3. Second quarter, Buccaneers were driving. What a great goal line stand that was by the Chiefs. That was a momentum changer. A big play in the Super Bowl. They get the ball back, they get a first down, and then their drive stalls with a drop pass to Travis Kelsey. And I thought that was their real chance to gather some momentum in that game and get it going. They just had that drop pass. Then they had a shanked punt, gave Buccaneers great field position again. And then they just weren't able to recover after those defensive penalties on that drive. One or two of them may have been questionable, but they still held them to a field goal and went offside. So it's not like, they made just one, the refs just made one mistake and the Buccaneers got points. I think when you add all that up over a 5 minute span, I think the momentum was just too much. The Chiefs defense was on the field for too long. And that's when the running game of the Buccaneers and the play action game really took over. And the Chiefs just they couldn't gather themselves to come back from that.
It was a scenario where last night, not everything went wrong, but it seemed like anything that could go wrong did go wrong. And it seemed like everything added up last night. I said in the first episode that I thought I was worried that the Bucks defensive line would give us fits, and it was beyond fits last night. It was horrible.
That's
But it takes nothing away from how the Bucks played. I'm not saying that. It was a storm of Tom Brady led them very, very well on offense, and the Chiefs played poorly everywhere else except for Mahomes. I felt like Mahomes played a fantastic game last night. He did some remarkable things. He just it almost seemed like the Chiefs' first time in the Super Bowl for a lot of those guys. When it's a lot of them's, you know, second time in the Super Bowl, and they made the AFC Championship the year before that. Kelsey seemed uncharacteristic. I had a really funny feeling when he dropped that pass early, and he just kind of sat there on the ground and sulked about it a little bit. You're the best tight end in the league. You've made a mistake. You dropped a pass. Pop back up and be ready for the next one. But I pretty much agree with what Kyler said. Spot on. The Bucks played old school football. They pounded them and pounded it and pounded it. The Chiefs not, they couldn't prevent yards after contact. The Bucks were breaking the line, busting a couple tackles, and they kept going. Chiefs offense couldn't get nothing going. They did a great job defending Tyreek. Kelsey had an off night. I don't know what it is. Whether it was the Bucks' speed at linebacker definitely had something to do with it. But I just don't feel like Kelsey was on his A game last night. And then we could do a whole podcast on the offensive line. They were outclassed last night, and it's a line full of backups. They were outclassed for the Super Bowl. It was pretty hard to watch at times.
So what's pretty remarkable about this game is Mahomes was pressured more than any quarterback in the history of the Super Bowl. I think it was 29 out of 52 dropbacks or something like that. The Bucks rushed 4 pretty much the entire game. They didn't bring an extra blitzer all night. And what's even worse is we blocked 5. We didn't have an extra blocker back there all night because, what's the extra blocker going to do? He's going to pick who he's going to block because it's one-on-one everywhere. And we don't know who's going to beat the blitz, so we didn't have an extra blocker back there. We literally put another receiver out there all night. We had an extra guy we had an extra guy to throw the ball to all night. It's just when you blitz 4, that's been the success against the Chiefs, and you can drop 7 guys into coverage, it's hard to find guys open. And one thing that Todd Bowles did really well, they blitzed 4, but you never knew which 4 were coming. There was a couple times that they had 4 guys right in the middle of the field, look like they're blitzing right up the middle. 2 of those fast linebackers would drop back into coverage, and they'd bring 2 DBs from the outside, and you had no clue where they were coming from. Our O-line was atrocious, to say the least. It was terrible. I think that there was a statistic. Mahomes, when he dropped back to pass, scrambled, trying to make a pass, just on pass plays, before he got the ball off, scrambled for 498 yards, and Tom Brady scrambled for 34 yards. Like, that tells you the story of the game. The Todd Bowles had a great game plan. Buccaneers play action killed us. They got the run game going. They got the play action game going. They did what we said they would do in the last podcast. They played looser zone defense. They guarded the outsides, guarded over the top, and they let their fast linebackers and fast DBs attack the ball when they threw it to the middle of the field. They had a perfect game plan for us. It looked like the Buccaneers made adjustments from when we played them in the regular season, and we didn't even expect them to make adjustments because we were trying to go deep with Tyreek early. We continue to try to go deep, honestly. We probably should have taken a page out of Brady's playbook and been doing little crossing dump-off routes, but the problem is their linebackers were so fast, they attack us as soon as we catch it. It was the perfect game plan for the Bucks, and like you said, the Chiefs couldn't do anything, and they couldn't. It was a terrible game to watch, to be honest.
Yeah, so there, in my mind, obviously the Buccaneers had the better night. Chiefs had 2 bright spots. So yeah, Mahomes was pressured the whole time, but the dude was making throws. We just weren't catching them. So Mahomes wasn't a problem. And also something nobody's brought up is he didn't have to kick an extra point, but Butker was 3 for 3. So, we all at certain points in the year, I think we all had worries about what Butker was going to do. He played his game really well, but the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they outclassed Kansas City last night. They just really did on most aspects of playing football. And, part of that is Tom Brady. So, Tom Brady, like you guys have mentioned, he brings this sense of like accomplishment, like we can do this, we're going to do this. But, a lot of guys stepped playoff Lenny. He kept doing his thing last night. And you had their whole defense, that was the most I've seen the defense click as a unit since Denver played, what was that, 5 or 6 years ago, and they damn near blanked the Ducks. Like, that was a very good defensive performance. So all the credit in the world to Todd Bowles for getting that team ready. Somebody else threw out a stat that, this is the second game Kansas City and Tampa Bay have played this year since the end of the first half, or maybe the end of the first quarter in that first game. Tampa Bay outscored Kansas City like 60-12 or something like that. Something crazy. And you kind of see it, they made adjustments. They did what they had to do. And we all wrote it off the first time in the game in the regular season as, we took our foot off the gas. But looking back, did we? Or did those drives kind of stall out on their own? So Tampa Bay, they they whooped us last night, and it's good moving forward to get whooped every once in a while. So Kansas City hasn't been whooped like this since, I think Kai and I looked it up. It was 2016. Week 4 of 2016 was last time we got beat this bad.
Monday Night
And
Football against the Steelers, I believe.
yeah, and so it's good to keep that in fresh in your head when you're moving forward. You've been good for a while. It's like, hey, we can be beat. We're not superhuman. We're not just going to go win 5 of these in a row. So I thought that was a good thing for um, Kansas City to experience. Yes, does it suck losing in the Super Bowl? Sure, but we still got to the Super Bowl. We're still the class of the AFC, and this isn't the last time the Chiefs will be there. But to move on, Super Bowl MVP Tom Brady did win it. This is his 5th Super Bowl MVP, which is wild to say. Kelsey, do you have any thoughts on Brady winning that?
I mean, you could have given it to a number of guys. I would have given it to Brady. I will say this, going back to what Kyler said and what you guys mentioned, Brady bringing the winning mentality has nothing to do with the game, but I found this very interesting. Brady sent a text message to every single Bucs player and coach this week that said, "We're going to win this game," and that's just a statement of Tom Brady's mentality and what he brings to the team, the leadership he brings to that team. He played a near perfect game, threw like 7 incomplete passes, 3 touchdowns, no picks, took care of the ball. I mean, you could have given it to, heck, you could have given it to Gronk. He had 2 touchdowns. You could have given it to Levante David, who had 11 tackles. I mean, there's numerous people you could have given it to, but in all honesty, the Super Bowl MVP usually goes to the quarterback, and the Bucs wouldn't have been there if Brady wasn't their quarterback. So I have no problems. And there's numerous guys you could have given it to, but I'm not going to argue with it.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue it either. I feel like Brady was a great choice, very deserving. If I didn't give it to, my personal opinion, if I didn't give it to Brady, I think Levante David would have been next up. One guy who I don't know his stats, I don't know if he was even was considered by most people, but the guy I felt who played amazing for the Bucs last night, and I haven't heard much talk about, was Barrett on defense. I thought he was disrupting stuff all night long. His name just stuck out to every time you saw Travis Kelce covered up or Mahomes getting pressured or something. It felt like Barrett was always there. Like I said, I don't know what his stats were, but I felt like he played a great game as well.
You guys keep saying David. Do you mean to say Devin White?
So Devin White, yeah.
Yes,
David had 6 tackles. Devin White had 12
had 11
tackles.
or 12,
2 tackles for loss, 1 and then 1 interception. So.
And Devin White covered up Kelce all night long.
No, that was Levante David. Levante David had 4 or 5 pass breakups on Travis Kelce. Passes defended, 1.
Yeah, he's talking about Levante David was guarding Kelce. Devin White was the one.
Levante David was covering Travis Kelce for
2 passes defended.
But he was, every time the ball was thrown to Kelce, Levante David was right there. I don't know how they give credit for stats like that. And maybe it was a couple of them were drop passes, but Levante David was draped all over Travis Kelce. And if you watch the Chiefs this year, what is Mahomes' safety outlet? It's throw it over the middle to Travis Kelce, keep the sticks moving. It's worked all year. It did not work last night. Part of that due to the amount of time he had to throw the ball, but a lot of it was due to Levante David. The thing I'll say about Devin White, that dude was all over the place, sideline to sideline. The outside runs were not there. The screen passes were not there. And who was there stopping it? It was Devin White. But as far as, I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to give the non-quarterback MVP. I'm going to give it to Byron Leftwich, the offensive coordinator for the Buccaneers. The first couple drives, the Chiefs were stopping the run, and the Chiefs were, they were getting off the field on defense. It wasn't until those few penalties. So credit to Byron Leftwich. He stuck with the game plan. He pounded the ball, but he also wasn't, even after that impressive performance against the Bills, the Chiefs secondary had, where they just were draped all over the receivers, shutting them down. He still challenged the Chiefs secondary, and he won. They had four or five defensive secondary penalties called on him. which was a big part of getting the lead. And I'm gonna say Byron Leftwich, did a great job in this one.
So you would give it to Leftwich before you would give it to Todd Bowles,
I'm
defensive
giving it to
coordinator.
Leftwich, Carl.
The
If
first,
you want to give it to Todd Bowles, tell us why.
so nobody has held the Patrick Mahomes led Chiefs to single digit scores. And yeah, did the Chiefs inflict some of that themselves? Sure. But that's because that defense was ready to play. They were ready to play in that game, and Kansas City just wasn't quite on that same level. So I think Todd Bowles, so we can't give, to me, if we're going to tout Brady and all this mentality and all this stuff and him as what he does to the game, to me that devalues your offensive coordinator a little bit, because there was a time last night where they were on Brady and he was literally yelling at the sideline like, don't send that play in here, we're not running it, we're running this, we're running this, we're running this. Like, there was a lot of shots that he called last night. And so, you know, I think that kind of devalues Leftwich. Like, I respect your opinion on it, but I would go Todd Bowles over that, because Todd Bowles had his team, his defense very well prepared to handle Kansas City.
Well, like everybody said, there was a lot of people you could have given it to, and I just felt like everybody did their part, and I just wanted to throw a little credit to the coaching staff for getting them ready to play.
Yeah, they were.
I agree, Tom Brady. You give except for in 2007 when Big Ben got robbed, you give it to the QB. You give the Super Bowl MVP to the quarterback, especially when you play as perfect as Brady did. So well deserving. A lot of people deserved it, and they just played a fantastic game.
Was
Speaks
that
to
the
how well
Hines
they
Ward
played.
year? Was that the Hines Ward year?
That was Santonio Holmes.
Antonio, oh, that toe drag year.
Well, it speaks to how well the Bucks played. Like, when you have an argument on how many different guys, not just between Brady and whoever on defense, it was a number of guys. And, running back by committee is the thing in the NFL now, but Jones and Fournette both played awesome last night. They split the touches, so their numbers weren't off the charts, but both them guys played well. Gronk played well. AB played well.
The ironic thing about having Jones and Fournette on the same team, there's not very many, bell cow backs in the NFL anymore. Derrick Henry, like you said, it's running back by committee. Both those two guys are bruisers and could be bell cow running backs on any team. They have two of them, and they wore the Chiefs defense out.
Definitely. We had a very hard time bringing them down the later the game got. They got more yards after contact every single drive they had.
It was also impressive to see the guys that Tom Brady kind of drug along with him. So Gronk, AB, and Fournette coming from the AFC. I realized he was looking for a new team anyway, but pretty sure he went to Tampa Bay because of that. All came out of the AFC, switched to Tampa Bay just because of that, and they all played very well last night.
Hey, shout out Shady McCoy, back-to-back World Series or Super Bowl champ.
One thing we haven't mentioned, all the weapons that the Buccaneers have, and the receivers pretty much weren't used at all. Evans 1 catch, 31 yards. Brown 5 catches, 22 yards. Godwin 2 catches, 9 yards. All the weapons they have, they pretty much used tight ends and running backs to demolish the Chiefs last night.
How many yards did Mike Evans get off a penalty, though?
Yeah, that's one thing.
Quite a few.
That one penalty was 50 yards.
That comment brings me back to kind of what I said earlier. Tom Brady, there's a lot of quarterbacks out there in the NFL that get all excited. They want to throw 40 times a game, and they want to win that way. Tom Brady, one of the credits to his greatness is he doesn't care. He's willing to hand the ball off. He's willing to do play action. It makes it easier on him. And I think that's a credit to where, he doesn't have an ego. And that's part of why he's won 7 Super Bowls.
His egos win first. He doesn't give a crap what his stats are. He just wants to win. He wants another ring on his finger. I'm agreeing with you, Kai, 100%.
Why is that so few and far between, though, in the
Egos.
NFL nowadays?
because he goes. One stat
Everybody
I saw. Well, one, Brady has more Super Bowls than any franchise now, and two, Brady has 7 Super Bowl rings. If you combine every quarterback who played this year, that's including Drew Brees, who's about to retire. There's 8 Super Bowl rings in the NFL that weren't won by Tom Brady. So when Brees retires, he'll have as much as the rest of the NFL combined.
So since we're getting into Tom Brady a little bit, let's talk about his status as the greatest to ever do it. There's, I think, in my opinion, that he put it out of reach. So you look at the history of the NFL, been playing Super Bowl since 1967. Whole franchises haven't won 7. Tom Brady, as you just mentioned, has won 7 himself, like as the leader of the team. That alone, I think, is untouchable. So there was a stat come across today that Tom Brady has a higher percentage chance of making the Super Bowl in a season that he plays than Steph Curry has of hitting a three. Steph Curry's career 3-point average is 43.4%, and Brady has reached the Super Bowl in 47.6% of his seasons. So that is just a ridiculous clip that can never be. And I know some people are about to bring up Mahomes, but what is always going to loom over Mahomes from last night moving forward, lost to Brady in the AFC Championship, lost to him in a Super Bowl. So the only things that could bring Mahomes back is he wins 8 Super Bowls or he wins like 5 in a row. Those are literally going to be the only 2 scenarios where you could ever discuss anybody being the greatest of all time that's not named Tom Brady.
Well,
No.
I'm guessing you think I'm about to bring up Mahomes.
Yeah.
I went into this game. I actually told my other brother Chase that if Mahomes loses this game, he will never be widely regarded as the greatest football player of all time. And whether it's true or not, whether in the end Mahomes was, you're never going to prove it. Whether in the end Mahomes was a better quarterback or Brady was a better quarterback, it doesn't matter because Mahomes' 2 playoff losses right now are against Brady. I mean, when it's all said and done, that's what people are going to look at. Like you said, Mahomes have to win 8 championships, and I actually said this today. Everyone says the Chiefs are going to be back. The Chiefs are going to be back, and we're the favorites next year, so we probably will get back. But everyone thinks we're going to make 5 or 6 Super Bowls. That doesn't happen. Eventually, Mahomes' contract's going to start coming in. We're going to have to draft perfectly to even have a chance to make that many Super Bowls. Like I hope we make the Super Bowl next year. I hope we make it the year after, whatever. But the fact of the matter is, there's a small chance we may have seen our Super Bowl appearances. I mean, I think we'll make one or 2 more. We should, but there's a chance that the Chiefs might not make the Super Bowl in Mahomes' career again. That's just it's hard to do in the NFL, and Brady's made it look so easy that people think they can do it.
Yep.
I mean, it will be. I'm not going to say it's unreachable because I don't think that's fair to say, but it will take a miracle for someone to reach Brady's status as the GOAT.
That leads right into my point, is there is nothing in sports, statistically, GOAT conversation, whatever, there's nothing untouchable. Brady is about as close to untouchable as you can get, but there's always somebody, not to go into the NBA, but Jordan was supposed to be untouchable forever, and now that's a debate. Mahomes is going to have to rattle off 6 of the next 7 of the next 10, which is so hard to do in the NFL. It's nearly impossible. Like Kelsey said, Brady's made it look easy. And you're right, not beating Brady is going to loom greatly when it comes to that conversation, but it's not untouchable. And it might not be Mahomes. It might be somebody else who comes out years from now and is a great quarterback. So I don't think it's untouchable, but Brady wrapped it up last night for at least the next 10 years. It's going to be Tom Brady.
Well, and yeah, my take on that is kind of goes into what I said earlier, that there is a way for Mahomes to try to be the GOAT, and he has to follow Tom Brady's playbook. And what I mean by that is take less money. You don't need $50 million a year. I mean, I think we've proved in the NFL long enough that we get these young quarterbacks, they come in and they look amazing because they're on a rookie contract and you can fill out the rest of your roster. I think it requires a pay cut from Mahomes. He doesn't need to be the top. If he wants to win Super Bowls, he doesn't need to be the top paid quarterback. I'm not telling him to not do that. That's all. He has the power to do that, and he deserves to be the top paid. But if he wants to win that many Super Bowls, he's going to have to sacrifice a little bit, and that's exactly what Tom Brady did his whole career. And so we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL that just want that money. They say they want to win, but then they take all this money, and it's impossible on the organization to go out and sign that extra free agent in the offseason to take your team over the next level. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that.
So
So
there was a
on that,
point where Brady was the highest paid player in the NFL, but it was during that 10-year stretch he didn't win any Super Bowls, the
yep.
2005 to
Yep.
2015. So, like you said, it's a lesson he learned, like, hey, this didn't work for 10 years. What was different the first three? And he corrected that. Now he 15, 17, 19, 21 rattled them off.
So an interesting thing to add to that. Anybody know what Tom Brady's salary is next year? It'll
24
probably blow
million.
your mind. $15 million is Tom Brady's salary for next year.
Hey, Big Ben, are you listening?
I mean, but if you would have told a 25-year-old Tom Brady that he would have still been making 15 million a year when he was 44, he'd have probably been like, let's go. Like,
Right.
that's
And you guys know I'm pro player on everything. I never tell a player to take a pay cut if they don't take a pay cut because I mean honestly, I'm not going to tell Patrick Mahomes he's not worth $500 million to the Chiefs franchise because the Chiefs are where they are because of Patrick Mahomes. I mean we watched him play last night, even with a beat up O line and receivers dropping balls. He's getting knocked to the ground like dodgeball and throwing the ball 45 yards in the air, hitting a guy in the hands. I mean he's amazing and he deserves whatever he wants to have. But that being said, Patrick Mahomes is going to make a ton of money from all the endorsements he's going to get. Like, I'm not one to tell people to take pay cuts, but some of these players that are the best player in the league, you're going to get so much money from endorsements. Like, at some point, you got to be like, hey, maybe we want to win some games here and take a little bit less money to allow my team to build around me.
At the end of the day, it's their choice. But you saw that game is a very good representation of the difference between Tom Brady and everybody else. And that's if you want to win in the NFL and win Super Bowls and win a lot of them, I think that's the answer.
Yeah, and it
Yeah,
kind of
I
speaks
agree.
to Brady. We talk about ego and whatnot. Brady has a pretty unique ego. He's going to talk his stuff. He's going to let you know. He's going to take his pictures with his rings on. He's going to play the Bad Boys for Life with Gronk, walking back to the airplane, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, he's a class act, and he's going to take his pay cuts to help his team. He's going to do whatever it takes to win, and still talk his stuff when he can, and boast about how good he is, and go to the beach with his wife afterwards, and probably show off on Instagram and let everybody know they're not living his life. But it all just wraps around Brady's greatness as a player, is he does what it takes to win, and then yet he still has that ego to drive him, as like having the fire lit underneath of him to keep motivating him. You got to think about how many guys Brady's age who could probably still make a roster as a backup, third string, whatever. But that dude wants to be the best. He wants to be the best player. He's not there to mentor somebody. He's not there to collect his money. He's there to be the GOAT, and that's what he does.
Yeah, Vinny
I s-
Testaverde played till he could damn near draw Social Security. So, like, it doesn't.
I saw him talking about Brady earlier, and they said dude still shows up 5 a.m. every Monday to start watching film, and he watches film all week, practices all week. Like the drain that would take for that amount of time. Like, I mean, his life is football, and
You
he
have to
devotes his
love
life
it.
to football. Yeah, I mean,
Well,
it's insane.
before the Green Bay game, it's however many hours before the Bucks could take the field in their warm up stuff and throw and pass and catch and all that stuff, and he was out there in his street clothes with a jacket on, walking around so he could see what the field felt like. There's not many guys that are going to do that, and it just speaks to it.
The other argument you'll hear is, well, he still lost. So we've heard it in the Jordan versus LeBron debate. Like, is it better to make it there or go? He never lost one. So, some people like to bring up Joe Montana, but give me 7 out of 10 before you ever give me 3. I mean, he got there. Like, don't even bring that into the discussion. It's not even.
That's only an argument to discredit somebody's greatness. I don't care that how many has Brady made total now?
10.
10. You got to the Super Bowl 10 times. That is unbelievable. I don't care if you won them or lost them. That is you're not gonna be established as the GOAT if you make 10 and don't win a single one of them. Like, that doesn't look good. But if you're winning over half of them, if you're making it on almost 50% of the years you're in the league, that's GOAT stuff. Whether you win them or lose them, you're there. You're playing for the biggest prize in sports.
Well, I mean, I would say winning 7 Super Bowls and making 10 is probably the greatest achievement of any athlete of all time. I think it's right at the
team
top.
sports. And team sports, the only thing you could argue would be like Tiger Woods or something like that. But team sports, yeah, there's no doubt.
Serena Williams would be another.
Yeah, she's up
Yeah.
there.
But yeah,
It's
team
arguable.
sports.
But as far as basketball, baseball, football go, that's the greatest achievement on my list.
Yeah, you had the Yankees in the 20s would have an argument there.
Okay, well,
but
hold up. When you can spend $100 million more than everybody, I don't see that as a good of achievement.
In the 20s, I don't think payrolls were in the hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah, but there was
I'd
5
I'd
teams
have to
back
fact
then.
check that one.
Speaking of dollar values, we'll move on to Super Bowl odds for next year. So Vegas released some odds today, and the Chiefs are the odds-on favorite to win it again at 11-2. And then most sports books had the Packers in second at 9-1, Buccaneers at 11-1, Ravens and Bills at 12-1, and then you had a host in the mid-teens. So, what are your guys' thoughts on those odds? So, Cody, do you have any thoughts about what I just read?
Yeah, I don't think it's any surprise that Chiefs are number one. Not to sound like a fanboy, but they're going to be back. They're not saying they're going to be back to the Super Bowl. They're going to be good next year for the next couple of years. It's just understood. So you got to like their odds. The Packers kind of surprised me a little bit because you don't know what's going on there. They're gonna be good if everything stays in place for them. How good, nobody really knows. But if everything falls back into place, Rodgers is happy. They keep everybody happy. They're a good team. I agree with the Bills, Ravens being right up there. I think the Browns maybe should get a little more credit, but it goes to that division is ridiculous. It's so good. Somebody's going to get, unfortunately, beat up by the other team. As back to the AFC, after the Packers, it was who?
Buccaneers at 11-1, and then the next NFC team is Rams at 13-1, Niners at 14-1, Saints without Drew Brees at 16-1, Seahawks at 18-1.
Yeah, I pretty much. I mean, it's pretty much exactly what I agree with. Everything falls back for the Bucs. They're going to be good. They have a lot of expiring contracts, though, don't they? Didn't somebody say that earlier?
They do, but they also have the 11th most salary cap in the league.
Okay.
So, I mean, if they're smart and sign their guys and don't try and go sign someone big or something,
yeah,
they
they're
should
going to
be
be
in fine
good.
shape.
I really like the Rams next year, to be honest. I think Stafford's going to make them really good.
And I think that's why the Buccaneers aren't 2. And like the Packers are overvalued in my opinion. But
Yes.
I think the Rams getting significantly better at that position kind of brings the rest of the NFC teams down just a touch because you've got to bring them back up into the conversation.
So I'm not sure. I don't know what sports book you looked at. I'm looking at William Hill Sportsbook. I'm just looking at one on my computer here. That way I have a list in front of me. Chiefs at plus 550, Bucks at plus 900, Packers at plus 900, Ravens at plus 1200, Bills at plus 1200, Rams plus 1300, 49ers 1400, Saints 1800. For those of you who don't bet or gamble or don't know what that means, if you bet $100 on the Chiefs, you'll win 550. That's where their plus 550 comes from. 100 on the Bucks, you'll win 900 plus 900. So the teams that surprised me, the Saints at the 49ers at plus 1400. That ranks them behind only the Bucks, the Packers, the Rams in the NFC, and then the Saints right behind them at plus 1,800. I personally think the Seahawks, even though I do think the Seahawks were overrated most of the year, and I think how the year ended is about right. I don't have as much faith in the 49ers. I don't even know who's going to play quarterback. They're still going to keep Jimmy G. The Saints the same way. I don't know who's going to play quarterback. Is Winston their guy? Is Taysom Hill their guy? I think both those teams are a little overvalued. And the AFC, you got Chiefs, Ravens, Bills. I'm going to be honest. The Bills at plus 1,200. I have full faith the Chiefs win the Super Bowl. But if you can put $100 on the Bills and they win the Super Bowl, you win 1,200. I think that's a good team to put money on if you're actually looking to gamble on them. Because I personally think the Bills, other than the Chiefs, have about as good a chance as anyone. That team's going to be a year older. They've been there at this point. Josh Allen's going to be a year older. I think that's that they have a good team in place there. In the AFC, who's next? The Browns are next. The Chiefs, the Ravens, the Bills.
Browns are
20
next.
To 1,
yeah. Colts 25 to 1.
And the Colts, depending on what happens with their quarterback position, I can understand that, but 25 to 1. I mean, honestly, the Chiefs. I mean, the AFC is pretty much Chiefs, Ravens, Bills right now at any odds. Other than that, if you think the Browns are going to win the Super Bowl, go put money on them now because they're plus 2,000. Like, there's nobody else with high odds at all. I agree for the most part, except for those few teams I named off.
The whole thing could shake up real quick if we get some news in the next couple weeks where Deshaun Watson's going. I mean, that
Deshaun Watson, Carson Wentz. I mean, there's so many moving parts this offseason. Mm-hmm. You don't know who anybody's quarterback's going to be this
season. You got to think if, that hypothetical scenario where the Browns, like a contender, say the Browns or the Steelers or somebody that's right on the fringe grabs Deshaun Watson, their odds go way up.
Yeah, I don't think Deshaun Watson's going anywhere, but that'll be an interesting situation to monitor in itself. But as far as my take on those Super Bowl odds, I mean, how can you not have the Buccaneers at least tied with the Chiefs for the best odds?
I think it's because there's more teams in the NFC, honestly. I think there's just more teams in the NFC to compete.
Well, this year, that was the opposite. The AFC was supposedly loaded. So, and the Ravens aren't going anywhere. The Titans aren't going anywhere. The Bills aren't going anywhere. And the Colts might even get better. One of the interesting things to watch is who is going to get Carson Wentz, because this guy's, he might have had a down year or two, but he was playing at an MVP level 3 years ago. If he, a dark horse pick for me, if you're looking for dark horses, the Chicago Bears are sitting at plus 5,000. They have a solid defense. They have good running backs. They have a good receiver. If they get Carson Wentz, I'm not saying they're a favorite to win the Super Bowl, but it might be worth putting some money down right now at plus 5,000 and lowering your bet and, maximizing your payout. A couple other dark horses would be the Indianapolis Colts. If they get Carson Wentz, I mean, they had an old Phillip Rivers this year. They had a really good run game. They do a lot of things that the Buccaneers did this year. They just didn't have I don't know what they were missing exactly. Maybe it was, Rivers doesn't match up to Tom Brady, but if they can get Carson Wentz, who's a mobile quarterback, doesn't just sit in the pocket and make some more plays for them. The Colts and Bears are, a couple of my dark horse picks, but that obviously hinges on getting Carson Wentz. We'll see what happens with the Steelers. They're a lot lower than they are typically at this time, and deservedly so. But I think they were 11-0 this year, and they had a good squad. If they shore up a few things, and Big Ben comes back on a cheap salary, I think they could be a dark horse pick. But other than that, I think those are the three teams I'm circling. The Titans are plus 2,800. Let's not forget how good they are. If they can shore up that defense a little bit with that run game and Ryan Tannehill and those receivers, they are a threat. So there's some dark horses out there. But my money's on the Buccaneers. I just can't believe that they're not at least tied with the Chiefs for the highest odds.
I'm going to take that.
Buccaneers, it is hard to repeat. And I always like stats that work out like this. So it happened with the Spurs in 03, 05, 07. They skipped. Brady, 15, 19, or 15, 17, 19, 21.
Yeah.
So it's hard to win back to back. It's an even year Super Bowl next year. Brady's not winning it.
So
Mark it down. Mark it down. Brady's team will not win next year.
while you were going through that, Kyler, I just want to say a couple things. One, you said you like the Titans at plus 2,800. You already said that, but I was going to say if you're a fan of the Titans, they've got high odds. Another team, depending on their quarterback situation, we already talked about them last week. Washington football team is at plus 6,000.
Dang it! You beat me to it. You beat me to it.
If they can screw up that quarterback position, $10 could win you $600 real quick.
If Carl hadn't cut me off, that's what I was going to say. Is you want to talk dark horses? I'm taking the Washington football team now for $100. They might end up with somebody worse than Alex Smith at quarterback next year. But if they don't, if they somehow land somebody like Watson, Wentz, any of those guys, they're going to be pretty good. Not saying they're a lock to even make the playoffs, but you've got a chance.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about the Rams. I didn't mention them because their odds, I think their odds are pretty fair. I think Stafford's going to make them a lot better, but at plus 1,200, I think they're right where they need to be. And
yeah, they jumped them up high a lot.
It wouldn't surprise me if they won it at all. They've got a good squad, but those odds, I just don't like those odds.
Yeah. So moving on, we'll get into power rankings. We've mentioned a couple of them throughout this odds talk. We'll go through the AFC first. So I don't think we're going to have many surprises probably in the top two. But Kyler, do you have 5 picks for your top 5 power rankings for the AFC?
Well, for the AFC, I think you got to go with the Chiefs number 1. They're returning pretty much everybody. They're going to be a force. Bills, same thing. Bills, I think they'll be the favorites in the AFC going into next year. But then we get into some of those other teams that were right there on the fringe this year. The Ravens are going to struggle to pay a couple of their defenders. I think Judon's gone. They're going to lose a couple pieces on that D line, which worries me because they really rely on that defense. You can say what you want about Lamar Jackson, but if you get the Ravens behind, it's tough for them to come back. So I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to say Titans. And then I'm going to go with the Indianapolis Colts. If hinging on if they get Carson Wentz, I think they can be up there. And I'll round out my top 5 with the Titans at number 5.
All right, Cody.
I think that's a pretty good 5. It's hard to pick with so much uncertainty. I agree. Chiefs, Bills, 1 and 2. They were great this year. Not knowing what's going to happen with the quarterback situation, I'm going to go. My next 3 are Titans, Browns, Dolphins. Those are my next 3. That's just what I have a feeling of. I don't know. I like where the Dolphins are headed. I think they're going to be a little bit better next year.
So I actually agree with you. I have Dolphins in the 5 spot as well. First 2 unchanged from what you guys have said. I have Ravens in the 3 because I think Lamar is going to be pretty hungry. Like he's kind of getting that taste and going. And I have the Colts at 4 because I fully do expect the Colts to figure it out at quarterback because Jim Irsay goes and gets quarterbacks. So Peyton Manning realized, hey, having a good quarterback is real important. Andrew Luck, yeah, they had a couple years in there with Brissett, but then went and got Phillip Rivers. So I don't think he's going to wait too long. He's going to figure something out this offseason and have a quarterback in there. So I have the Colts at number 4.
So I have Chiefs 2, pretty easy. I think 3, say the Browns. I think the Browns are going to be an improved team. We saw how much they improved from last year. 2-headed horse at running back. Defense is a lot better. They're not the Buccaneers by any means, but they do a great job in that play action, getting Baker Mayfield out of the pocket. I think they'll be a tough team. I think the Ravens will be 4. I think those 2 will be fighting for the division this year in the North. And then I'm going to go Titans at 5. The Colts. I don't even think the Colts were better than the Titans this year. I would have picked the Titans over the Colts this year. With so much uncertainty at quarterback, I can't pick the Colts. Obviously, that could change. Who knows what the quarterback situation will be? But I would say right now I'd have to pick the Titans over the Colts, just for the uncertainty of what's at quarterback.
All right, and then we'll go back around the horn. Kelsey, give us your NFC.
NFC. I know this is going to go against the grain of everybody. No, I would say Bucks 1, Packers 2. I would be half tempted to put the Packers at 1. Um, with a new coach last year, you saw how well they did. Great run game, great defense, arguably the best receiver in the league, one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the league. That's a great team there. The difference, I think, is the Buccaneers quarterback I like more than the Packers quarterback. Even the Packers quarterback's more talented. But I'd say Bucks 1, Packers 2. At that 3 spots where it gets interesting because you got the Rams, the Niners, the Saints, the Seahawks. You can go down the list here. I would say Seahawks 3. I don't like. I'd say Seahawks 3, Rams 4. I'd have to see Stafford in LA before I could pick the Rams above the Seahawks, but that'll be a fun division race because you also have the Niners and Cardinals in that division as well. And then 5, I'm going to assume that the Cowboys signed Dak Prescott, and I've got the Cowboys at 5.
You took my hot take.
That team, we all hate Dallas. Everyone hates Dallas, and it's mostly because of Dallas fans. And I hope Kansas City fans don't continue to act like Dallas fans because it annoys the heck out of me, and that's how Kansas City fans have acted lately. Dallas thinks they're the best team every year, but the reality is before Dak got hurt, they were moving the ball. If they can trip a couple things on that defense, they're going to win that division. They should win that division and compete in the NFC. So I'm going to say Dallas at 5.
Yeah, so that was going to be my. I thought it was going to be a hot take, but you stole that thunder from me. I have the Cowboys at 5 because I fully expect them to sign or give Dak Prescott his money. He was balling out right before he got hurt. So
Yeah, he looked great.
Small piece of me just died putting the Cowboys in any sort of power rankings, but I have them at 5. I have the Seahawks at 4. Obviously that's a very tough division out there in the NFC West, but the Seahawks, they're going to figure some things out on their own. I put the Packers at 3 because I think fully that they're overvalued. I don't see them being able to sustain because they're always letting media kind of get into their locker room, and so I don't see them being able to sustain what they did this year. I have the Rams at 2 and Tampa at 1. I think Stafford makes the Rams that much better. And then Tampa, we saw that last night. So
I'm going real hot take. I'm one upping you there. Rams 1 for me. I'm riding the Stafford train all the way to the bank. But I said in episode 1, I'm a huge Stafford fan. Already a good team, upgrading at quarterback. I'm taking Stafford 1. It was hard for me to go against Brady and the defending champs and not put them 1, so they're my number 2. After that, I'm going to go with Green Bay. I don't like their situation right now, but you just can't bet against Rodgers. And after a successful year. 4, I'm going to go the Bears. I think they figure some things out. I think they get better. The NFC North is pretty weak, so I don't like them. And 5th, I'm going the Arizona Cardinals. I think they're going to get better, a year older. Kyler Murray looks good. He might take that leap to the great status next year. And that division is just up for grabs. The Rams are my favorite, but Niners are good. The Seahawks are good. I don't know who's going to come out of there. The Seahawks in the second half of the season cooling off like that makes me a little apprehensive going forward with them. They're a good bet, but I'm just going to go Cardinals at 5.
Yeah, and you kind of stole my thunder a little bit there, Cody. I'm going with the Rams at number 1.
That's why I went next.
Matt Stafford. Does he take the Rams to the next level? I believe he does. I mean, what quarterback? You're not a driven quarterback to play for the Lions for the last however many years he did. Come out, play injured, and fight your butt off trying to win games unless you're, hungry to win. And going to St. Louis, or not St. Louis anymore, going to Los Angeles, even better. He's got Sean McVay, who's obviously a great offensive mind. He's going to rejuvenate Stafford, even though he doesn't need it. And I think, they have a quarterback now that if things get tough and they got to go no huddle, they got a quarterback that can do it and make tough throws. So I'm going with the Rams at number 1. Number 2, no surprise, Buccaneers. I'm with you, Cody. I had a hard time not putting them number one, but somebody's going to give them a run for their money. I've got the Packers at 3. I'm kind of hesitant to put them that high even because they didn't beat anybody this year. They had one of the worst schedules in the league. And, they beat the Titans and beat them convincingly, but that was really the only impressive win that they had. And I'm a little hesitant to put him even that high. I've got the 49ers at number 4. Let's not forget, 2 years ago, they were winning the Super Bowl in the third quarter and handling the Chiefs. And this year, they had a ton of injuries that no team would have overcame. They hung in there. They won a few games. They're well coached. I think they come back next year. And, we talked a lot about the number 5 spot, Seahawks, Bears, Vikings. Not Vikings, Seahawks and Bears were in there.
Cowboys.
And Cardinals, Cowboys. That spot's up for grabs, obviously. I think there's more to the demise of the Seahawks this year at the end of the year. I think there's more to it than that. I think they have fallen into that trap where they are too reliant on Russell Wilson that a lot of other teams make. I'm going to go with the Minnesota Vikings. I think they had one of the most explosive offenses in the league this year. And Justin Jefferson came out. Dalvin Cook he's got a few years left in him if he can stay healthy. And I just have a feeling that Mike Zimmer, who's a good defensive coach, which is what let him down this year, I think he'll have a plan in the offseason to get that defensive back plan to what it was a few years ago. I'm going with the Vikings, and I think they'll really threaten to win that division.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good take. When you lay it out on paper like that to me, it makes a little more sense. Jefferson's good, Cook's good.
The only thing I'm worried about the Vikings is their secondary. It let them down this year. Cody, I want to know how last week you said the Bears are going to bear, and then this week you come up with a hot take at 4 in the NFC.
No, my hot take was the Cardinals. The Bears are going to be competitive. They're not bad. But like I said, it's not 2006. They're not going to have that magical run. They don't have Devin Hester there. They won't win in the playoffs, I don't think. But I don't think I'm not as high on the Vikings as Kai is, even though I do kind of agree with him. They've got some weapons. The Lions, I think, are going to be in the pits. So, you're looking at a few easy wins there in the division. They'll make the playoffs. They're good enough to make the playoffs, especially being in that division. They take one off the Packers, like it gets even easier. They'll be there. They're not beating anybody.
I'm curious. Cowboys?
The Packers' schedule will get a lot harder this year too. They played the NFC East, which was 4 easy wins. That division was the NFC North was a train wreck this year. I mean, you pretty much hand the Packers 10 wins there. I mean, the Cowboys, yes, Dak, and it's mainly has a lot to do with what division he plays in. Giants going to be 2 easy wins. Eagles, who even knows who their quarterback's going to be, should be 2 easy wins. Football team, if they can get a quarterback, could be a tough couple games. But and I think I don't know what division they play this year, but I think the Cowboys will take that division this year. Dak was flying the last 2 years. I hate the Cowboys.
So
I hate their fans. They get on everyone's last nerve, but the Cowboys should take that division this year.
Well, and go ahead and talk the Cowboys up because every time, as soon as they start getting talked up, I'm going to take a page out of Cody's book. The Cowboys are going to cowboy.
That's fine with me. I have no alliance to the Cowboys.
They were everybody's pick.
To the Cowboys at all. I just picked them to be my 5 in the NFC.
Everyone's pick to play the Chiefs.
To pick up 5, and that's what we did. So that's where we're going to leave you guys for today. Obviously, football season just wrapped up. This has the makings to be a very interesting off season here the next month or two. We're going to start getting into some March Madness stuff, and then, baseball's right around the corner. We got some good golf right around the corner as well. So stay tuned for all that. As always, we appreciate everybody listening. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you're listening to this on Spotify or anything, share it on Facebook with your friends. We appreciate all the views and all the ears we can get. And I just want to say thank you guys. Be good out there.
Thank you.